Hey there, delighted to be joined by J.R. Beason. He is an attorney that has represented folks in Benton Harbor and other areas that have been exploited and victimized by environmental contamination and corruption, and now is behind a pretty massive lawsuit against multiple individuals, entities, over what I feel is accurate to say is a poor Black community in Kalamazoo, Michigan, being poisoned by a multi-billion-dollar corporate conglomerate. The backstory, which I've covered there, is Graphic Packaging, which is an international company, is all over America, is emitting, at this point, I don't even think we know, at least several dozen forms of toxic gases into the community on the north side, the east side of Kalamazoo. Somehow, despite them clearly violating environmental and health regulations for years, they have not been shut down, and they were actually assisted by the state of Michigan to expand their operations 2 years ago. And I interviewed and met a whole lot of residents that are sick, high rates of asthma, COPD, heart issues, and it seems that the county of Kalamazoo has not been the most transparent as far as the amount of people who have died as a result of respiratory issues in this community. I just want to give the overview. It's a 160-page lawsuit. You're suing on behalf of plaintiffs against the US EPA, Graphic Packaging, the mayor of Kalamazoo, Governor of Michigan, Gretchen Whitmer, in addition to a whole lot of other defendants under constitutional violations, violations of the Federal Clean Air Act, and many other things. So let's start with what brought you to this story in Kalamazoo, and talk about the overview of why you're suing on behalf of these plaintiffs.
Okay, thank you. First, I want to thank you for all your work you've done, journalists like yourself, giving these issues light. I wouldn't be able to do what I do if it wasn't for journalists putting things on the record, because, like you were saying, there's a lack of transparency, and there's not much to start with. But I came into this situation basically just trying to give the people a voice. I'm a new attorney. I haven't been practicing long. I've been in this jurisdiction about 2 years now, which in civil time isn't long at all, because the cases move so slow. But yeah, I came here essentially. I'm from Benton Harbor, Michigan. I'm from West Michigan, basically. Kalamazoo is about 45 minutes up the road. I have an aunt who lives there. So basically family. Essentially over here in the Western District. So I came to know about these issues through Brandy Crawford and other people, citizens suffering, and trying to voice the issues. And once I came to know about it, I looked into it, and it just seemed like it never stopped, ending, as far as how deep the case ran, or how long they've been going through this, and just how much there was to cover and to speak to.
I want to read this part because it's really astounding. So in 2009, a main juncture chamber shared by Graphic Packaging International's Northside facility and the Kalamazoo wastewater reclamation plant burst, causing hazardous pollutants and wastewater to spill into the community. The juncture chamber in question is allegedly owned by the city of Kalamazoo, but rests within Graphic Packaging's facility. Responsibility and accountability for the maintenance of the chamber has allegedly been a point of contention between the two defendants since. Later that same year, the city of Kalamazoo commenced an engineering study on the juncture chamber in question that revealed it was leaking dangerous amounts of hydrogen sulfide. Hydrogen sulfide is a hazardous chemical known to cause irreparable respiratory injuries and eye irritations with chronic exposure. City of Kalamazoo did not inform citizens about the 2009 engineering study confirming toxic leaks, and they have not removed the chamber. So this is in 2009. My math is pretty bad, but that's well over a decade ago.
Correct.
And somehow only in 2023, so 14 years later, does the Michigan Health Department release an overall study showing hazardous levels of hydrogen sulfide. That's quite the delay when they knew there were hazardous levels of hydrogen sulfide 14 years ago, not to mention the health study that they released as far as I can tell, is very, very inadequate. And they only really reviewed all the other gases that Graphic Packaging is releasing. They only reviewed it over a couple days in the course of a 3-year study. So the media ran with hydrogen sulfide is the only problem, but
Right.
it's clear that that's the only dangerous gas that's being released at hazardous levels there.
Yeah, it's definitely not clear. There are other chemicals like particulate matter, Freon, which has a very long chemical name, but Freon, when you basically Google the the regular use name, it's the Freon that we know from refrigerators and coolants, basically. So that's been sprayed around. There's this dust that essentially collects other microorganisms and other chemicals that are in the air that the community has been complaining about for years. So they're funneling the issue into this odor issue, which is why I presume they focus on hydrogen sulfide, because it's known to present the very hard to miss pungent odor that most people have been people are complaining about for years. But the issue is that the odor also carries with it other chemical effects. It hurts. It causes bodily injuries. So the fact that the state and the city has known that fact and hasn't told the people that these smells that you were smelling can actually hurt you, like you assume that they are hurting you, it can actually hurt you. So yeah, they delayed that for, like you say, decades, and 2 years, 3-year study that they really didn't have to engage in doing, because the known results of that chemical were out there. And the chemical also masks the smells of other chemicals. So you could be releasing chemicals that smell sweet, that smell other recognizable smells to them, but you can't smell them because of this rotten egg, this death type of smell that hydrogen sulfide it just so happens to provide. So while they were citing them for making this an odor issue, the bodily injury issue was always present, and obviously more worthy of being spoken to than the nuisance of having to smell something you don't like.
Right. And can we talk about, as far as I know, almost 2,000 Black infants under the age of 1 died in Kalamazoo County. That was from 2015. Most of the Black residents live on the north side near this plant. So, I mean, if nearly 2,000, I think it was 1,950 Black infants under 1 died, presumably it had something to do with this neighborhood and whatever was in the environment from this plant. Somehow, mysteriously, the data, was taken off the Kalamazoo County website. So I don't know what the numbers are since 2015. But can you talk about, because your lawsuit goes after wrongful death, irreparable bodily harm, assault, battery. Can you talk about, this is not just people suffering it with it now, but an untold number of people have died?
Yeah. There were, we had the whole COVID pandemic, that all of us, in America suffered through, but those who were in the north side of Kalamazoo suffered through it while being exposed to these hazardous, air contaminants, while already being, caused to have asthma and respiratory issues. So there were, there's no way to really quantify or really know how many people have suffered or died as their deaths were contributed by, the chemicals coming from GPI. Yeah, so it's very, as far as those statistics with the MDHHS, I haven't been able to confirm them or to define those statistics of how many people died in 2015. Officials said that there was a disparity, but that number wasn't accurate. But that was just what they've said on face value. We haven't actually seen the numbers from that year. So yeah, I can't really say.
The Michigan Health Department and Environmental Department have a history of, let's just say, being creative with data. If you go ask the people of Flint and elsewhere.
Correct. Yeah. And I know there's different ways, you can skew data. So one thing I learned, I gleaned from statistics class myself when I was at Michigan State, was that you can do a lot with statistics. It depends on what your intention is when you're, putting together these studies and, and whatnot. So, yeah, it's a lot can be said about, how much intentions can skew, what a study says on the back end. Yeah, but one thing I was able to verify, or I noticed a trend with in the numbers, was that birth defects kind of trended up with GPI's emissions over the years from the 90s up until into the 2000s, the amount of different chemicals they put into the air, you could see correlate with the amount of birth defects that were being recorded, in the county. So I think that's also something that it speaks, just to the effects that these chemicals are having in the community. Yep, and on the people and the quality of life, life expectancy, and so on.
Can you talk about the governor's role? Obviously, this has been going on longer than she has been governor, but somehow, despite the health department, the environmental department fielding a lot of complaints, they knew that they had fined Graphic Packaging, which is pennies to a multi-billion-dollar company. The Graphic Packaging had a history of leaking chemicals into the Kalamazoo River, which already has a not great history with contamination. One of the biggest oil spills in American history years ago. What specifically why is specifically the governor on this? Because we do know her administration approved a massive bond deal, $125 million bond deal in 2021 to help Graphic Packaging expand and release more of these toxic gases.
Right. Yeah. Basically, it's the interplay between the different government agencies. It seems that, one scratches the other's back, and, you can't really have your arm scratch your shoulder without your head telling you, your arm what to do. So it seems that the way, these bodies, interplay and operate, that they wouldn't have been able to do so without some type of oversight or direction from the governor's office or from her, higher up in the administration. So the fact that these things happen, on her watch, and like you said, it contributed to the expansion, significant, political influence was put behind, making sure that GPI was able to do, create this expanding, their emissions, violations. So, yeah, we feel like as a matter of leadership, she's responsible, as the leader of the state.
And, for those that don't know, Bobby Hopewell was the mayor of Kalamazoo. From everything I've seen, was basically kind of working for Graphic Packaging, ignored most of the residents' complaints about the smell, the asthma, the health effects. And when he left office, he was quickly appointed by Governor Whitmer to serve on the Michigan Economic Development Corporation, which is a fancy phrase for a board of politicians, donors, and business people that the governor appoints. So it seems that, there seems to be some connection between this former mayor who was doing the bidding for Graphic Packaging, then being appointed by the governor on this economic board, and then that economic board approving this bond deal, which ultimately the taxpayers of Michigan are going to be left on the hook for, to help a multi-billion-dollar company expand. Can you make that make sense?
I cannot, personally, I can't make it make sense. It's really sad and disheartening. I'm an optimist and I like to think, but, really it seems that a lot of our public officials have become facilitators for, big business and for corporations. So we vote them in thinking that, they're going to represent our interests. And then, corporate comes in or has already been in, helping them present this facade that they're representing and protecting the interests of the people, when they essentially facilitate, the pecuniary interests of the, big corporations. And, it's sad, but that's exactly what seems to, be happening in Kalamazoo. That the public officials are primarily, focused on protecting the interests of the corporations, their reputations, their standards. It seems that public health has become far second, or if far down the line. I wouldn't even say second, far down the line from in comparison to pecuniary interests in making money for these corporations.
And can you humanize it? Because obviously you've spoken with residents. I was there over a couple of days. I met Deanne Winfield. She lost her daughter. She was 17 years old. She had a minor case of asthma, but then when the family moved closer to this plant, her asthma got so bad that one day she had a severe asthma attack and they couldn't rescue her.
Daughter to an asthma attack. Then she was 17. Then I found my son unresponsible. He couldn't breathe to an asthma attack. Now, due to that, my son has a trach. He's on 24-hour oxygen, and I have a life support machine at my house.
How old is your son? Her 32-year-old son, my understanding, is on 24/7 oxygen. She lives basically right next to the plant. I interviewed her just right on the curb, and you could smell it from there. So I could only imagine every day what she's dealing with and people in this community are dealing with. She put up video, hacking her lungs out in the middle of the night because it gets worse, the smell and what they're releasing in the middle of the night. Can you talk about the residents you've spoken with and the tragic stories you've learned, and basically them being, in my view, kind of prisoners in their own community? Because from what I've seen, kids are not on the playground because parents don't want to have them outside. Schools are not letting kids out for recess. This is not how people should be living in their own community.
Exactly. Exactly. It's it's really sad. It's heartbreaking. Basically, it's like you said. It feels like you're caged in your own community. Caged in your own environment. Essentially, it's similar to lab water. Because we have various lab water issues in Michigan, but with the air, it's almost like being a fish. When oil gets poured into your environment, like you can't get out of the air. So it's really hard to think about. I spoke with one client who just didn't understand why her kids were having these rashes and eye irritations and throat inflammations, and she just had no idea. They've been to doctors. I spoke to one resident who'd been to a doctor over and over and over again, and him and his doctor couldn't figure out why he was suffering these different nervous system issues or chronic seizures. And so just the not knowing, I think, has been the hardest thing, because when you don't know, you make up all types of scenarios as to why you're suffering, or you spread the blame on yourself. Is it something I'm doing wrong? Is it something I'm eating? Should I change my diet? You really have no idea. So your mind is scattered. Your energy is scattered. Trying to figure out why you're going through these things. So it turns out that they call it crystallized calcite, which is a core particulate matter, which has the capacity to bond with different agents. So when you have formaldehyde and freon and chloromethide, all these different dangerous chemicals in the air, and you're emitting like essentially this dust that collects them all, at the same time, there's no telling what different variation of reactions people are going to have, to it. So now that they know what's going on, it's like, wow, I have this issue that we couldn't figure out, why this was happening to me, or I had this various, problem or rash or, sickness. And, people like to, keep their problems to themselves, and no one goes around, parading, their sufferings around. So most people have been keeping their issues to themselves and not, talking about the various things that they go through. But once you get a semblance of why you're going through it, then, so everybody's kind of having this revelation at the same time, so it's disheartening, it's heartbreaking, but hopefully we can do something about it.
And can you kind of talk about, obviously it's not just unique to Kalamazoo, but Kalamazoo has a pretty thick history of racism. And the current makeup, it's mostly white politicians who certainly don't live in this neighborhood, who ignored the residents for years and years and years, mostly Black residents who were complaining. And now suddenly, after we reported, we kind of caused some outrage based on that reporting. Then suddenly the health department finally releases a study. Suddenly they're saying it's their top priority. But can you kind of talk about, there's a long history of racism here that I think cannot be separated from the treatment of these Black residents? Yeah,
it can't. This country, every country has a history of the way it developed, that affects the current day. America's no different. The way our country developed with zoning, redlining, racism is part of America's customary traditions. Whether we like it or not, we can shy away from it, turn our back to it, but that's the operating reality. So these people are in this situation because of the racist decisions that generations, people made before them. So it's up to us to either correct them or, let them operate the way that they were established to operate. But they were established to operate to injure people. That's just the way that, it seems to be. The north side was zoned as an industrial zone. And so when we realized, okay, we're going to bring jobs to the community, we're going to industrialize and evolve the community. Where are we going to put the factories? We're not going to put them next to the rich white landowners who this country was established for. And we're going to put them next to the indigenous Black people that the land was stolen from, or who were brought here to be, labor. So that's how it happened. So moving forward, 40, 50, 60, 100 years later, we have the obligation, to correct these things, as opposed to just, turn our back to them or ignore them because it's uncomfortable. While we're being uncomfortable as a nation, people are being injured and suffering, and these problems are being kicked down the road, to our grandchildren and so on. So it's time that we stand up, as Americans, and rise to the occasion and fix these things.
And can you talk about what specifically are you seeking in damages? Is there a dollar amount? And what is the lawsuit, looking to accomplish?
We're looking to get GPI's production down at least to a level to where it's healthy, or to get them shut down, essentially just to get the chemicals out of the air and to get the threat alleviated. That's the primary goal. And we're seeking compensation, monetary compensation for these youths and for these families, and for the residents and for the community, so they can be made whole. They have irreparable harms that they're going to have to live through, for the rest of their lives, and they're going to have to plan for generations to move past. So we need them to have the resources, and the means to do so. So we're seeking $600 million. That's on the face of the complaint, and that would be for the community, to be spread through to remediate the various different health issues and whatever problems that remain in the community, get these chemicals out.
600 million.
Yeah, correct. Yeah.
And my last question: what does it say to you? I mean, I have not gotten a response from Governor Whitmer's office for weeks, reaching out. I've heard other reporters who have asked for comment on this. She's not commenting. You're obviously smart. You've noticed that mainstream national outlets have kind of done puff pieces on her and talking about her future in politics, maybe a White House run down the road. What's your message? Because it would seem strange to me that a Democrat who is supposedly better on the environment is just hoping she could just kind of wait it out and not comment on basically the environmental poisoning of a Black community in her state. Right.
My message would be to, rise to the occasion. I think that, her being a future presidential nominee, or, being looked at in that light, this will be a good opportunity for her to earn that, that position, to earn that type of recognition. It would be, this would be a great opportunity for her to show the nation that she can provide the type of leadership that we need, to move forward. So I think that, everything's a blessing, so this might be a blessing in disguise for her, and for the Democratic Party to actually, earn that support that they get from the Black community across this nation, and an opportunity for us, as the Black community across this nation to hold them accountable, basically both parties, accountable, for what they say they're going to provide, because what the law says we are owed, we don't get. The law terms, Black Americans and other communities as protected classes, when that's the whole underlying theme of Black Lives Matter, is that these lives in particular are not protected at all, by the laws as they sit. So all that we're asking for is equal protection, and this will be a great opportunity for her to show that she can lead a nation that espouses to provide equal protection to all of its citizens. So I think we will see. We have an opportunity to see, who qualifies, to be true leaders, in this nation.
Absolutely. Thanks for taking the time. We'll definitely stay up on this and give updates to the audience as things progress. Thank you, JR Beason. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.